All right, so I'm going to first explain the process, the agenda, as they call it, for the first half of the forum, and then I'll introduce the candidates. And then we'll start asking questions and hearing their answers. So the basic process here is going to be that each candidate is going to give an introductory statement of 2 minutes each. That is projected to go from 7:12 to 7:20. And starting at 7:20, we will have questions that have been prepared by the league and/or from the audience. We have 35 minutes scheduled for those questions and answers. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer every question, 2 minutes per maximum per answer. At my discretion, candidates may have 1 minute of follow-up comment each before a new question is asked. Then each candidate will have an opportunity to make closing statements, and those are limited to 1 minute, and they should start at 7:55 so that we can adjourn take a break at 8 o'clock to prepare them for their candidate forum for State House District 1. So, starting with the introduction of the candidates, Ashley Hicks, who does have a place to sit if she gets here, is not here. Sitting next to me is David Brock Smith, with a background in the restaurant business and public service. David Brock Smith is a third-generation resident of this Senate district. He presided over the Port Orford City Council and Chamber of Commerce before moving on to chair the Curry County Board of Commissioners, and then was elected to the Oregon House of Representatives in 2016. He was appointed to the state Senate in 2023 and is the deputy leader of the Senate Republican caucus. And he's sitting to my right. To my left is Todd Vaughn, a resident of Tiller. Todd Vaughn has been a logger, timber cutter, firefighter, and a residential building contractor. He has served as director of his local school board. He is a Republican. And on his left is Paul Romero Jr. Paul Romero is a Navy veteran with 10 years of honorable decorated service, is married to Oksana, is that right? And a father of 5. His work history extends to the areas of project management, auditing, investment advice, and workforce education and development. He is a Republican and describes himself as an Oregonian and America First candidate. And with that, we'll start with the questions. First, with the questions prepared by the league. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, here I am already missing. Okay. So thank you for correcting me, and we'll start with the candidates' introductory statements, and we will start with David Brock Smith.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all here in beautiful Bandon, and a wonderful day. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, as always, for putting on these candidates forums so that the candidates can have a conversation with their constituents. I have had the privilege to represent many of you, if not all of you, in the Oregon legislature since 2017, when taking office as your state representative. Prior to that, I was a Curry County Commissioner and did a lot of work in Port Orford and Curry County with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the City Council, Port Orford Langley School Board, and so forth. I have had that privilege and honor to serve in the state legislature as your state representative, state senator, and specific to Bandon in our region, have been able to accomplish a lot of various things. One, as you know, nearly all of the cranberries grown in the state are grown in this area, in this district. In 2014, I was able to work with the United States Department of Agriculture to change the phytosanitary certification for the USDA on not just cranberries, but blueberries, strawberries, cherries, not just for Oregon, but for Washington and California, so that they can export them overseas. We're going to be having a celebration this next week for the Port of Bandon, as former Senator Hurd and I were able to secure over $2.5 million for the Port of Bandon's redevelopment, which is a huge economic development project for the Port of Bandon. So I'll just stop there and we'll get to some questions, and thank you.
And next we have Todd Vaughn.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having us tonight. I'm a logger from Tiller, Oregon. I live right on the South Umpqua River, the headwaters of the South Umpqua River, with my wife of 37 years. I got involved in grassroots politics over forest issues, as you might imagine. I fight fires on the Umpqua National Forest, which they have been gradually destroying on purpose for many years now with fire. It's rather disturbing. I began to look into a lot of the issues that were happening. I've had a feeling for quite a while that we were under assault. Those of us who live in rural Oregon were under assault. I began to look at legislation that's being passed. And one of the things I find very disturbing, I expect the type of legal assault that we're under from the Democrats, but I do not expect it from my fellow Republicans. And I was very disappointed to realize that many of the Republicans are voting with the Democrats in Salem. I'm a conservative Republican. I want to have my land ownership rights protected. I want my children, their education to be protected. And I think all of these things and many more are really under assault right now. The bills that we have coming out that have affected me personally and my wife, Senate Bill 762, the wildfire mapping bill. My fire insurance just went up $1,200 this year. This year, my fire insurance went up $1,200. So there's just a number of bills coming out that I find very egregious, and including your windmill bill. It's an assault on my intelligence, if nothing else. We don't need windmills. We have much better forms of energy. So the reason that I'm here tonight is because I think we can do much better, and I expect better out of my conservative Republican colleagues. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Romero. Thank you all for coming out, and I'm really happy that this is actually being recorded. For me, I grew up came to Oregon in Pendleton in the 5th grade, and then shortly after that we moved to Prineville. Graduated in 1984. So Generation X, and I think that Generation X has been kind of out of the mainstream for much of everything, including politics. I kept getting angry about what was being done. Represented me because it wasn't representing me. I was explaining to one of my mentors, and he said, BJ, you should run for office. I said, I'm not a politician. He said, that's why you should run. And I can't tell you how many great people I meet all the time that should also be running for office, whether it's city council, county clerk, mayor, even. And yet people don't. And so one of the things I do is I challenge people to step up because we have an awful lot of experience out there. It's just sitting on the sidelines. Until you're dead, your job isn't over. It's my attitude. Now, for me personally, I watched our timber industry when I was a kid, forest products in high school. Where is it now? Where's all the tree planting? We used to fight those fires. We used to put them out before they got invaded. They don't do that anymore. And on top of that, they just passed a bill, I believe, for $220 million to reestablish things to basically make it easier to fight fires. And have it supposedly. The problem is that budget is so huge for forest firefighting. It's a money-making business, even if they're not putting the fires out, especially if they're not putting them out. So this is one of the issues I have, amongst many others, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But what I think is very simply this: if we don't have proper representation, people fighting, people that are not going to compromise themselves while they're in the legislature, we don't need to spend any more money. They're already overspending money in the state. We need to be more efficient. More of a fiduciary responsibility, I believe, for every legislator, but we don't see that being represented. How many bills have we seen submitted to reduce our taxes and fees? Thank you.
I'm going to propose we share YouTube. So is this on those? Okay. All right, now we are going to start with the questions, and we're going to be rotating so that nobody has the advantage of always answering last. We're always answering first. So I'm going to start with asking the first question is going to go to Todd, and then Paul will have a chance to answer the question, and then David, and etc. So the first question is, what skills and experience qualify you for the office of state senator?
Well, like I said, I got involved in grassroots politics. Me and a couple timber cutting buddies of mine started a group called Responsible Forest Initiatives. And what we wanted was for the Umpqua National Forest to build roadside fuel breaks, shaded fuel breaks throughout the forest. So we went out and we petitioned our community to sign to demand fuel breaks to protect us. I don't know if you guys know it, but in the Archie Fire here a couple years ago, Blythe almost got destroyed. We saw Paradise get destroyed. Our communities throughout these forests, throughout our federally controlled forests, are basically in danger all the time. Not to mention the smoke and everything else that all of us deal with. So what qualifies me for office is I began to work with people on a grassroots level. We actually prevented a state parks and recreation river designation from taking place on the river that runs through my property, the South Umpqua, runs from Tiller, like they wanted to designate 20 miles of river. I went up to Salem, spoke up there, and found out that what we really needed to do was get more people, more of my neighbors, who are actually the community of place. We need to get them on the stakeholders community. This is what they do. They create stakeholders communities, but the people that are really being affected by whatever's happening, they're not well represented. They only had 2 landowners on that stakeholders committee, and there were 30 other whitewater, fish, all kinds of stuff. This is what they do. They've got techniques. So I learned a lot throughout all of that. And I came home, talked to my neighbors, and told them, all of you need to demand to be on the stakeholders committee. They did that, and of course, what happened? They dropped the river designation. So that encouraged me. I got involved in the GOP in Douglas County and have just been, trying to really help to move things ahead in regard to the conservative Republican platform that really is what we need to put into place.
Okay. Ready to go? Okay. Yes. Very simply, my background in the U.S. military, U.S. Navy, I actually had a top secret security clearance, Special Department information. And one of the big advantages of that is knowing who your real enemies are. And in this country, I think we seem to have forgotten an element of communism that we can't afford, period, under no circumstances. And yet, we see it invading this country, we see it invading this state, and that needs to come to a big end. My background for education, workforce education development is pretty important. Throughout my career in life, I've always been a trainer, sharing my knowledge with everybody who will listen. Students, adults, children, whole 9 yards. I also have a background in investigations, as well as analysis work and code breaking. I don't have to break too many codes, but I do have to do audits. And when you track down and find out where money goes, where it's coming from, that gets really interesting. But fundamentally, you kind of need to know these things. You need to understand budgets, something I do also understand. Because right now we have budgets that seem to just grow and grow and grow, and we don't really get much of anything for them. I'd also say, fundamentally, my constitutional position, it doesn't really matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. What matters is to follow the Constitution and protect people, protect your citizens. And I think fundamentally, that's been a big failure in this state. Everybody feels this pain. We feel the pain of the taxes on gas, everything. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're an Oregonian, these are the things you're experiencing. And for me, it's a matter of standing up and fighting against these things at all costs. And every legislator, I don't care what part, they all should be doing the same thing. But if you find a legislator that's actually wanting to spend more money, there you have a problem. So automatically, probably know who not to vote for. Someone's gonna at least make their bottom line and do something that's gonna contribute to the economy here in the state. So, there you go, thank you.
Thank you. So I got involved with public service 21 years ago when I came back after living and working in the Rogue Valley and decided to take over my parents' restaurant lounge and pulled over the Ford started the restaurant lounge that my grandfather built after retiring from the logging industry in 1970. And a year into it, the business community said, David, we want you to be on the chamber board. And I said, I don't have to that. And then they had the election and they wrote me in. So I went to the first chamber meeting and I said at 26, I said, you know, if you're going to elect me to this board, you need to put me in a position on the board where I can make a difference. And so they did so. And then they proceeded to elect me president for 8 consecutive years. And the year after that, it was city council. Arguably, I probably have more elected or appointed experience in different positions in government in Oregon than any legislator in the state. So what qualifies me to work for you as your state senator? It is that there is no school for this. I draft legislation across the board when it comes to lowering taxes, when it comes to fighting for our personal property rights, when it comes to wanting a piece of those resources for projects such as the Port Abandon here, or for our veterans and securing the $35 million for the Roseburg Veterans Home. And so when it comes to experience, I've never seen any one of my two opponents up here testify in front of the legislature, let alone draft testimony in front of the legislature. And so that's what gives me the experience.
All right. We're working out the mechanisms for all of this. Is this on? All right. So the next question, and again, being fair, this question will be answered first by Mr. Paul, not Mr. Paul, Mr. Romero. Mr. Romero. All right. And so this question is, what are your priority goals if elected?
Priority goal is going to be to basically effectively push for lower taxes, lower fees. Right now, Oregonians are suffering big time in this regard. When you have a state that's been trying to push a new statewide property tax, again, same issue. Now, the argument I've been given by many Republicans in office is, well, you know, your bills won't even make it out of committee. Okay. So what do I do in that situation? Very simply, you make those people in committee that voted no, you don't make them finish, you make them infamous. Because one thing I'm learning about Oregonians, who you are, you want less tax, you want less property tax. You want to actually see the money that we're spending actually do something for all Oregonians, not kill off our security and safety, not kill off our education for our children, grandchildren. This has been a huge problem. So basically, it's the push, push, push. We're outnumbered, I understand that. We're outgunned a little bit there, I understand that. But the fact is, we all suffer the same pain. And it's important for us to focus on that. Because then we can get people to step up and take the place of these people and failing us. The next thing I got to commit is timber industry. This has been a big problem. When you have a Chinese national owning over 200,000 acres of timberland, the question is, how does this happen? Why was it hidden? That's a big problem. We have a federal government that controls over 51% of our land. Well, we can get that land back. Back, I think it was 2000, I can't remember the actual year, but very simply, we went with the federal welfare, so we didn't use our resources. Now, it used to be cities had all the counties had all the money they needed, roads, schools, everything, uniforms, you name it. And then we went to this deal, Title I, II, and III. Right now, county commissioners are sending that Title II and III money up to the state, laundering it through the general fund, and then expecting that money to come back so they can spend it however they want. We don't need it. It's time to get that back, and we can do that with the Apache County resolution. Thank you.
Goals moving forward are continuing to work on what I've been working on for the last 7.5 years. When it comes to the Pacific Coast Intermodal Port, many are familiar with the project for the Port of Coos Bay. Of course, I was a big proponent for the LNG project. Many of you probably in this room were not. But until Governor Brown killed it, I thought we were going to get somewhere with that. But now we've been working on the Pacific Coast Intermodal Port project, where we have a fantastic opportunity to turn that port into a shipping port. I've been very involved in that project, where we rail to an intermodal hub in Eugene. This is extremely important, especially considering that the Port of Portland's Terminal 6 just announced that they are going to be closing later this year. And so when it comes to our cranberry growers that want to export their products, when it comes to imports that are needed, our hay exports out of the Willamette Valley, our wheat exports out of the area of the Columbia River Gorge, our hazelnuts out of the Willamette Valley, they're going to have to take those all the way down to the Port of Oakland or the Port of Tacoma to be able to export, which is going to be critically much more cost effective for them. And then finally, I've laid out, you go to my website, and I've laid out our forest management plan to move forward. I worked with Senator White and Senator Murphy a number of years ago to end the fire borrowing so that the USFS and BLM have their resources for forest management. Now it's time to move forward and have them front load dollars so that we can transition those wildland firefighters to do fuel reductions within our wildland urban interfaces, get logs to our mills, and people to work in the woods. Thank you.
Well, I've seen the forest management bills and what they've done over the last 20 or 30 years. And I can tell you that every one of them is moving in the wrong direction. All we're doing is spinning our wheels and spending money. And just because you know what the word WUI means doesn't mean you got a solution, because I'm not seeing any solutions. And I've looked at some of the new legislation. The private forest support is a dismal product when it comes to the timber industry, of which I am a part. So I would say this, my main goal is for the conservative Republican platform that we have. If there's Republicans in this room, get a platform and read it. It is a roadmap for what we need to do. It's an America First platform, it's a constitutional platform, and it can direct us on everything we need to know. So my goals are going to be working with other senators who are holding the line on what is in that Republican platform, because I believe in it, and I believe that's what we need to do. Almost all the legislation you see coming down the pipe is actually crafted with Democrats. It doesn't matter whose name is on it as far as who sponsored that legislation. The Democrats are crafting most of it. There's an element of Marxism in my mind, according to my perspective, in just about all of this legislation that we're looking at. And what I want to do is I want to get together with a group of conservatives, because we still have a few. A lot of them got, basically pushed to the side through the walkout. We lost some of our very best. And I'm hoping that their surrogates make it back in. But my goal is to actually hold the line until people who are waking up, we are waking up people to what's happening to this country and what's happening to Oregon. My goal is to hold the line with other conservative legislators until hopefully Donald Trump helps make a swing in Oregon here too. That's my goal. Hold the conservative line, vote the platform.
Thank you. So the next question will go first to David Brock Smith. If I'm following this correctly. Okay. And this question is, how should wildfire prevention and protection activities be funded?
Thank you. So just real quick, it's all great virtue signaling with these comments, but when you're 13 Republicans and 17 Democrats in the Senate, 35 Democrats in the House, 25 Republicans, and a Republican governor, you can hold whatever line you want and say no all the time, but you don't have the numbers to stop it. It's relationships that stop things. Just like to this question, Senator Golden out of Southern Oregon wanted to pass a severance tax legislation. We went away from it a long time ago when it comes to forest taxes. And we were able to stop it in committee. Me working with Senator Meek, actually, Democrat from Oregon City, because he, in fact, because we had a bill for Senator Meek that I was sponsored a bill with him in regards to wakeboarding and the Newburgh pool. And we stopped that severance tax in the legislature. How do we fund wildfire? Since 53% of the landmass of Oregon is owned by the federal government, and the majority, when it comes to the BLM or USFS, of that those resources that are sold when those logs are taken off those federal lands go not just back to the counties that provide those resources to services to citizens. They actually go to the federal coffers. The federal government should be funding wildfire. And as I mentioned earlier, we fixed the wildfire borrowing, but by front loading those dollars, we can deal with the lands, the forest lands and management thereof within the wildland urban interfaces, and then expand out so that we can get those jobs in our rural communities, more importantly, to protect the communities and mills to market.
So what Senator Brock Smith was just talking about in regard to saying no versus negotiating and compromising is really a key point. Because I say, yeah, say no to Marxism. If it's going to be Marxist, say no to it. If it's going to take away our property ownership rights, say no to it. If it's going to damage our children, say no to it. How do you compromise with Marxists if you are a constitutional republic? You can't. They live by a completely different ideology than we do. Now, when it comes to fires and wildfires and the WUI, the wild urban interface, that's what I've been doing for years, is fighting fires. I can tell you how you pay for forest restoration and fuel load reduction. You pay for it by harvesting logs and selling timber. Okay, we've been doing this for years. We know how to do this. The problem is you have to jump through so many hoops in the Forest Service. You have to do all these environmental impact studies. They make it impossible for a timber sale to make money. And we've got to somehow break through that. It's got to be worked on with the federal government. And we've got to make it to where we can go in and harvest areas. 80% of the Umpqua National Forest is LSRs. You can't even sell logs out of 80% of the Umpqua National Forest. Is that crazy or what? That's a product of the Northwest Forest Plan. We've got to actually change some laws, begin to sell logs, and pay for forest restoration and fuel reduction by selling logs again. And that's a seriously hard problem because the federal government is also run by Marxists right now. They do not want the counties in this area of Oregon to prosper. They are breaking the counties by not allowing us to get the timber receipts that we should be getting. This is intentional. It's not an accident. This country is being destroyed intentionally, you guys.
First of all, I'm going to disagree with Mr. Smith. He says it's relationships to get things done. If all you're going to do is compromise your values and the values of those you represent, that's not the way to go. There's another way to fight. I say that voters stop things. That's why we're here. We get to a fight for you in that arena. Who's not going to compromise? And expand on what Todd here said. He's absolutely right. But there is a process. It's called the Apache County Resolution. And every county can go through it. Matter of fact, that's kind of big corporate ways to do it. Chris actually went to Arizona to learn about this firsthand. Most county commissioners know this process, but none of them have proposed it. They claim it's too much of a patchwork plan. Oh, it'll be too much of a problem. No, We've done it before, did it in the 80s, right? It worked then, why wouldn't it work now? The other thing they don't tell you is the Title I refunds, they actually steadily decrease over time. So we're actually losing, and we're being told we can't use our own resources for our own state. That's a problem. That shouldn't be going on. Every county would be way better off, not just for the county itself and the citizens, but also for the timber industries that reside in those counties. This is what we need to do. We need to basically take it back, go back to the Apache County resolution. It will fund all the things we need to, all the things we used to. Don't have to worry about school uniforms as far as sports or anything like that. That was never a problem back then. So they tried to build a better mousetrap. All it did was cost all of us some. That is not the compromises we can tolerate. And when you have the legislature that set us up for it, made it sound really good, but in the end, well, it screwed us. This is a problem. We don't have people really forward thinking come with other strategies, but there are other strategies. And the best part is, it's just a process. It doesn't require going to the Supreme Court, which I spoke with Murphy Plywood, and tell you more about that later.
All right, and the next question goes first to Todd Vaughn. And the question is, do you support or oppose the proposal by the International Port of Coos Bay to build an intermodal shipping terminal on the North Spit and Warren?
Well, my fear with the development of Coos Bay is that I'm not sure that China is not more deeply involved than what a lot of us really understand. In fact, I think China is more deeply involved in the floating wind energy project that is to take place off of Coos Bay than what we have been told. And I do believe that the development of this bay as an international port, I'm assuming a deep water port, this is something that China's been doing in their Belts and Roads project all over the world. China is lending countries all over the world money, putting countries in debt to them. And one of their main priorities of that project that they've been involved in for quite some time is deep water ports. China wants deep water ports that they can get into and utilize throughout the world. Why? China is building its military right now in a manner that should scare all of us. That is why I believe we need to decouple from China as rapidly as possible. I have no problem with businesses doing business with China as long as they're not doing it through their elected government officials, as in the Oregon China Council. For a business to send their own agent over and do business is fine with me. We need to decouple with China, and we need to do it over the next 10 years, however long it takes, if we have that much time. But in regard to the Port of Coos Bay, I think that there's more going on there than what we understand. There's always something going on with China that we do not know about. They are very, very crafty at unrestricted warfare. And that's what we're dealing with this country. So I do not trust anything that gives China an advantage on the US.
The Oregon China Council shouldn't even exist. Do we have an Oregon Germany Council? Do we have an Oregon Sweden Council? Do we have an Oregon any other country in the world Council? No, we don't. What is their primary platform? Stated on their website, Agenda 2030, Sustainability Goals, 17 of them. You want to talk about Marxism at its finest? This is how to suck the life out of an economy to make it weak. Because right now, China couldn't go toe-to-toe with us. They can't do that. Right now, we are under attack in this country by China. Everything Todd said is correct. We do need some improvements at the port, not a question. I think we all agree on that. But there's some other things going on here. The windmill projects, that's me China building these things. SoCal Shipping Company has a registered agent in Winston, Oregon. Why? So they can do contracts for Oregon, which means transporting equipment, people, materials to those sites. There's also a question now whether those windmill farms, those floating platforms, will possibly even come under the control of the UN. So investigating this, but it's kind of interesting because they're trying to push it a little further out than what they said. So it's not necessarily in our federal waters. Not to mention, by the way, infrastructure is their attack. They've been hacking everything. They do not care if they get caught. They continue to do that. The FBI, Director Ray has reported on this, so has a number of other people. So this is a legitimate issue. This is literally World War III being waged against us from the inside. And those that are compromised and going along with it, well, they become complicit, sometimes out of ignorance, but potentially out of actual knowledge. That's where I got a big problem with. When I've heard about me getting in bed with China, I understand where that goes. I know what we've been fighting for a long time. We have a different warfare than fighting nowadays, and we have to prepare for it here in Oregon. I think, like I said, we do need some improvements, absolutely, but not to the point where China takes control, because they need that work for their projects. By the way, we're all paying.
I believe the question was, do you support the International Port of Coos Bay's shipping container project? Oh, thank you. Got a little racist there for a minute. So I do support, as I mentioned earlier, fully support. I've been involved with the International Port of Coos Bay shipping container project since its conception a number of years ago. It's actually called the Pacific Coast Intermodal Port Project. It'll do channel deepening. And then it's roughly a $2.1 billion public-private partnership. We were able to allocate $60 million over 6 years of state dollars, mainly towards the channel deepening, which I know some of the environmental for-profit nonprofits are opposed to. I haven't. What I've been told is I look at it as the invasive crab eradication program when it comes to the channel deepening project, because it's a serious issue that we have with regards to the invasive crabs in the Coos Bay. The project is actually going to the private partnership. Again, not familiar, having been involved with any conversations with any Chinese companies or anything like that. It has everything to do with a company called North Point out of the East Coast. They're a rail company and shipping company. That is the private side of the public-private partnership. And it is fantastic. It's looked to be, it'll bring thousands of jobs to the area that has been had generations of economical depression because of the lack of the access to our natural resource industries that built our communities and are meant to sustain them. And so I'm in fully support of the project and look forward to it moving forward. Hopefully we'll have an announcement before the end of the year on some funding from the feds to bring that private partnership together.
Can I reply to that, please?
Yes, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. The deepening of these channels is exactly what China's doing around the world. And these container ships, these containers that we're talking about here, most of these huge container, shipping container vessels are Chinese. So we're talking about exactly what China is doing throughout the world happening in Coos Bay. I don't know what company David's talking about. He's more well informed on that than I am. But I do know this, there are Chinese owners of a lot of these companies, and what China does is very tricky, okay? So whatever we're doing in the Port of Coos Bay that is deepening that channel and opening it up for large cargo ships, for large container ships, we better be careful, because this is exactly what China's doing all over the world, and they don't do it out in the open, okay?
Let's respond.
You may.
What Todd has said is correct. That's exactly what they've been doing. Back when Obama was in office, he basically gave away Port Long Beach, our only West Coast deepwater port, to China. We don't even know everything China brought into that port. And as soon as Trump got in office, what did he do? He shut that down and took the port back, just as he should, as any representative of the nation should. So now China's going to keep picking and trying to find their way in. Now, I don't appreciate the money that's been spent on this wind project. It's going to be a waste of money. They can't hardly maintain what's on the shore, much less what's going to be out in the ocean. This is going to be a huge problem. And I don't see the environment screaming bloody murder like they do for everything else. If it's not profitable to them, they don't say anything. When it comes to China, they said, Don't look that gift horse, you better look that gift horse in the mouth, there's a whole lot more going on there. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get another minute. So this isn't gonna be one of those large deep water ports or those large mega ships, with the Coos Bay, channel and, the whole area is not, big enough for that. And since windmills keep on coming up, I might as well just have fun with that one. Adamantly opposed to the wind project if it wasn't for myself and the Coastal Caucus work associated with the wind project, because I actually created 6 listening sessions for Astoria and the Brookings, and saw the environmental community oppose the windmill projects. In fact, it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen is the Trump blowing conservative Republican and the environmentalist, Trump halfway conservative Republican environmentalist down in Brookings at that meeting saying the same thing. And if it wasn't for the work of myself and the Coastal Caucus, we have been able to reduce the call areas out there by 86% of what Vaughn originally proposed. Thanks.
You know, the unfortunate thing is we have all kinds of really good questions. We're just about out of time. So it's hard to decide which is the last couple of questions that we can ask in the time allowed. The next question goes first to Mr. Romero, and this question is, will you pledge to respect Measure 113 and show up for work while the state House, actually State Senate, is in session?
I think at this point, we almost have no choice. One of my biggest issues with the removal of number of senators is the fact that that just violated every voter's rights to representation. We choose who they are. They don't get to unchoose them. And as far as walkouts, this is something the Democrats used to use all the time in this state. Okay, that was their leverage way back. Now that it's Republicans' leverage, they don't like it. Amazing how that works. But it's like rules for thee, but not for me. We're going to play by a different set of rules. So fundamentally, none of these senators should be removed from office or kept from actually running again, representing people that elected them. To me, that's a fundamental First Amendment violation of our absolute rights. And that's what we see going on here in the state. Supreme Court of Oregon should never have gone on. Then again, we know that almost everybody on our Supreme Court has been appointed by a Democratic government. This also creates a problem. How do we overcome that? So there you have it. So keep that in mind.
I don't know if you answered the question, but so I've actually been through this process. I helped lead the walkout in 2020 against cap and trade, and stop cap and trade, as I led the efforts for the House and Senate Republicans at the time to stop cap and trade in Oregon. As I was anointed, if you will, David, this is what you're going to do when I came in office in 2017. And when it came to Measure 113, horrible initiative. I mean, it was written to be punitive. When we had the denial of quorum in the 2023 session, I was chosen to stay with Senator Anderson, and it was a caucus decision to do that. Even though some want to lie and say it wasn't, like they have some crystal ball into the truth other than me. But I mean, I think some of the proof is I was just elected unanimously by my Senate Republican colleagues to be the deputy leader of the Senate Republican caucus. And so it's hard to say a yes or no answer to that question because it depends on what the numbers are with regards to us gaining seats. I mean, we could actually gain enough Republican seats in this election to where we're in the majority. We don't have to worry about Measure 13. It's the Democrats that are going to be worrying about Measure 113. I mean, Kate Brown led the walkout when she was a senator majority leader in 2001, and then allowed Bill Bradbury, bless his soul, who was Secretary of State at the time, to then basically draw the and gerrymander the districts that we are now living in, that has given the Democrats the majority in the legislature for years to come. So until we get more Republicans elected to bring balance, we will not be successful.
Well, first of all, getting Republicans elected should be all of our goals in the Republican Party. But the real question is, are these Republicans true Republicans? Are these Republicans voting our platform? Because if they're not, it doesn't do any good. You know what a Republican that votes with Democrats is? He's a bonus for the Democrats. You know why? Because it gives bipartisanship legitimacy to everything they're doing to us. So that particular issue of taking the House, we've seen what happened in Washington, D.C. We took the House. What's happened since we took the House in Washington, D.C.? It's going to be the same thing right here in Oregon, as long as we've got Republicans that vote with the Democrats. That's the first thing. Second thing is, the denial of quorum has always been there for a good reason. It actually allows the minority party to stand a chance of preventing themselves from being run over by whatever kind of legislation the majority party wants to force down our throats. There's a good reason for that, and I think in Oregon we've seen what having this stuff forced down our throats feels like. It feels like tyranny to me. So I will say this, the denial of quorum is something that should be there. 113 took that away from us. Anybody that goes up there that wants to hold the line on conservative values, the very thing I've been promoting, the very thing I've said I would do, better be willing to walk out again. And I can tell you, I will walk out glad, because that's still going to be our only tool. The only thing is it's going to have a heavier repercussion that we all know is coming. And as far as you remaining, David, based on the caucus, that story is not the same everywhere. I can tell you that. Now, you have a right to your perspective and your story, but I've heard from other people that that was not necessarily a unanimous decision for you to stay. So I believe that walking out is the right thing to do if the egregiousness of the legislation that's being forced upon the Senate is such that that's the only alternative they have, which is what happened with the 2002 bill and with the gun law bill 114. So thank you.
Can I respond?
May.
At least to specify my position on this, I have to agree also. But if we walk out, every Republican has to walk out, not leave a couple behind. Like I said, it lends legitimacy to reaching across the aisle and just being smacked. So there you have it. You have to walk out. But at the same time, this needs to be changed. And I know at some point in the future it'll work against Democrats, but it's going to be in our Supreme Court to make that final decision then. Thank you.
Thank you. Having again been the one person in the room, I'm not even going to attempt to respond to conjecture, but I will tell you that we have an opportunity to, well, I'll go back. There was reason why we needed to keep Republicans on the floor. And that is, I was able to, because their floor schedule is such that you have courtesies in the beginning of the floor schedule before you have a vote, and then for a quorum, and then you have the remonstrances. Can't get the remonstrances until after you have a vote for a quorum on the floor. After that floor session, you always adjourn to a date and time certain. So the reason why it was a denial of quorum is many of the Senate Republicans were in their offices after that floor session was over, because it was going to be the next day. In their offices working, in committees working. We didn't have to leave the state like we did in 2020. Again, I love that. So there are shenanigans that occur on the floor from the Democrats that I was able to stop, such as fines being imposed, such as them using their courtesies as a time to bash my fellow Republicans.
All right, and now we are out of time for any more questions. There were a lot of good questions that were submitted, and I'm sorry that we don't have enough time to go through them all. But we do have now we are going to do the closing statements. Each candidate is given 1 minute to summarize why he believes he deserves your vote if you are a Republican in the primary coming up. And so we will start with, let's see, who should we start with? I guess we should start with, I think we'll do it reverse order of how we started and start with Mr. Romero.
First thing, I guess, is any questions that were answered, please grab one of my business cards outside. That number on that card is my personal cell number. Yes, I do answer it. Yes, I do respond to text especially because then I know what number to call back and I can actually speak with you. So I'm always available. So if your question didn't get answered, please give me a call. I can at least give you mine. In addition, on my website, romerofororegon.com, please pay attention to the contract with Oregon. You'll find that on my resource page. And very simply, it's just time to get in there and raise a little heck in our legislature. It's time for disruption. Part of that is making those that are violating ethics or not actually taking care of supporting and representing their constituents to hold them actually accountable. It's important for them to actually be doing the job. And when they're not, well, we don't really get an immediate response as to what they're doing. We don't know how they're actually representing. So please keep that in mind. My name is Paul Romero. Thank you.
Well, it has been a privilege to be with you all this evening. It's, of course, a privilege and honor to have served all of you in the state legislature since 2017, and some of you as a county commissioner prior to that. I look forward to continuing to do so in 2025 and moving forward to get more Republicans elected. That's what I've done in the past. I'll give you an example with the Coastal Caucus. When I came in the legislature in 2017, former Senator Coos and I were the only 2 Republicans in the 7-member Coastal Caucus. Now, as of 2023, we have 6 Republicans out of the Coastal Caucus and only 1 Democrat. And we can do that across the state. And that is what I want to do, to bring balance to the state so that we can actually protect our rural communities, their industries, and our residents. Thanks.
Again, you guys, for me personally, it's not just a matter of electing Republicans. We have to elect Republicans that actually vote our platform. We have all kinds of Republicans that vote with the Democrats. As long as that's happening, they're an advantage to the Democrats. They actually add bipartisan legitimacy to these leftist bills that we are constantly seeing coming out of Salem. So I'm going to stand the ground. I may not have a lot of experience, but I know how to say no. Okay? And there's going to be a lot of no's until we begin to see the people in Oregon standing up and really supporting the conservative values that I know a lot of you have. You guys need to get behind us and support us. I am going to go up there and vote yes on conservative bills, which will probably be 1 out of 20, maybe 1 out of 50. The rest is going to be a big no. No compromising with Marxists.
That's right. Thank you all, gentlemen. And we are now going to be in recess